Hello everyone, we are today joined by Rob from the Nashorn Restoration Project. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
And we'll start off with some questions from my Patreon supporter. And Jasper asks, were there errors in the original manuals? He notes, I have two light American vehicles and I have all of the manuals as PDF, which is great, but sometimes there are errors. Do you have access to original manuals and are they accurate, or did you encounter also errors in them?
Well, the German manuals are very difficult to get hold of. There are only a few left and also very expensive. I think you pay about 1,000 euros for just one manual. So we have a few manuals, but we don't really work with it. So as of mistakes in the manual, I don't know. I haven't seen them, but yeah, as I said, I don't really work with them. We sometimes use them for pictures in it. Some information, but the rest we have to find out. For the Nashorn itself, I only have one driver's manual, and it's not a technical manual for repair. So yeah, for that it's difficult to say.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I can look. Maybe I found you probably checked the German military archives for the manuals as well in Freiburg.
Yeah, I checked on several places. I'm not sure I've checked that one, but I think I have searched it. But yeah, maybe I didn't search it well.
I will try to also ask around because I know not everything is there. There are some manuals and army regulations that are not in the military archive in Freiburg. There's somewhere else, and maybe I can get some access or something and look around.
Yeah.
And for Jasper, your for question, I know at least I think one instance where Jens and or Doyle noted in the Panzer tracks that they encountered an error in a manual, so that he noted. I think they found out that the tank had this strength for armor, but in the manual it was something different. So likely there were errors as well in the manuals, in the
Yeah.
German one as well. So wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, it's made by humans though,
Yeah,
so there are bound to be errors.
So the next question is from Sina, and it's about the influence of the Dicker Max on the Nashorn. He notes, my question is how the combat trials of Dicker Max contributed to the development of the Nashorn. More precisely, why did the Dicker Max was cancelled after two prototypes while around 500 Nashorns were built? Did they learn something from Dicker Max that was fixed in the Nashorn? I think of the smaller caliber but higher velocity gun and more powerful engine, but was there something else?
To be honest, I don't know that much about Dicker Max. I don't know if anything was influenced on the Nashorn by that development. So I'm sorry, but I cannot answer that question correctly.
Yeah, makes sense. So the Dicker Max had a 105, I think, or I think it was actually it was the 105, but the Schwere Kanone, which you call it 10 centimeter, and was way heavier. And I mean, one problem was it was not as fast firing as I can remember, and underpowered. Okay, next question is from Bryan about combat effectiveness compared to the Marders. Was actual first theoretical combat effectiveness gained versus the 75mm and 76mm Marders? The gun itself was more powerful, but some sources mentioned that mobility was worse.
I've never driven in a Marder, so I can't say. I can imagine that because the vehicle's a bit lighter, it's easier to drive and more mobile, but I don't think there's a big difference there because the Nashorn is only 24 tons and has also a bigger engine. So I guess mobility is more or less the same. But yeah, of course, the gun is a lot bigger. And I think the longest distance recorded of Nashorn destroying an enemy tank is 4,200 meters. So that's a huge distance. And I don't think the Marder would be able to do that.
Yeah, and so basically also the Nashorn could destroy nearly every tank until the end of the war, whereas Marders might have problems with late war heavy tanks, definitely.
Yeah, and also the Nashorn is the only tank that took out M26 Pershing in the war.
Ah, okay, yeah. So yeah, in that sense, I have to look up if there's some mention. The thing is, it's always a bit complicated comparing combat effectiveness because one historian told me once, but I'm not entirely sure this is from memory, that they had like, I think there were 2 units with the Ferdinand elephant, and one unit did extremely well and the other failed. And this was because they were converted from different weapons beforehand, and the other ones used it differently. So it's generally comparing the combat effectiveness of one vehicle is a bit problematic because it always also depends on the unit. For instance, Shifter makes the example with the Sherman, that one armored division loved the stabilizer for the gun because it was well trained in it, and the other division wasn't well trained and they turn it off. So this is always, the devil is in the details. The more one knows, the more one says, okay, we have to be careful here.
Yeah, especially what is your background as a gunner?
Yeah.
You're trained on a completely different gun, or are you trained on a similar system? So how effective can you operate the system?
Yeah, and then the tank commander, or what was it before a gun commander on an anti-tank gun, or was it before a commander on a Sturmgeschütz, or was he a commander on a Panzerjäger like a Marder? So that also might have a quite influence, because I think in the Elephant Ferdinand example, it was the one I think converted from anti-tank guns and the other one converted from Sturmgeschütze or something, and they approached it completely different.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is from Gerrit. He notes, I would be interested in the following question. Running a tank or precise, accurate tank, what is the problem when working on restoring? Do you try to keep as many original parts as possible? Where's the red line, where you have to exchange an original element with a modern part? Does it have some impact, emotional, for dripping an original part, ambition to keep as many original parts as possible? Is there an economical aspect, like is it too expensive to keep the original part instead, or a modern element that is cheap and easy to get?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. You hear people talk about this all the time, especially people that not restoring themselves. Oh, you have to use the original engine and it's better. Yeah, of course, we agree it's better for originality. But original engine, it's difficult to get by. They're very expensive. The complete drivetrain is about 350,000 euros restored.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's a lot of money. And if you have that money, you could do it. But then still, if something breaks down, it's very expensive. So economically, it makes more sense to use a more modern engine. And if that breaks down, it's not that expensive. We have a Dutch engine, German-made, air-cooled diesel. They are very reliable. It's still a V12, so the sound is similar. And if that breaks down, you can exchange just one piston head. So it is very cheap to fix as well. And even if we completely destroy the engine, it's like 5,000 to 10,000 euros. So it's a huge difference. So for parts like that, it makes more sense to use modern parts because, yeah, what I said, it's difficult to get hold of an original engine and you're going to use it. So even museums are talking about it, taking the original engine out, saving it, and then putting a more modern engine in it, because in time you will destroy the engine if you use it a lot. So yeah, to keep history alive, it's most often for the engine more interesting to keep that as a spare, and we didn't have the original, so for us was a more simple choice. Let's take a modern engine, it's cheaper, and if we break it, yeah, okay, it doesn't hurt that much. If you break an original engine and you have to put new parts and newly made parts, it's also less original. And for other parts, we try to keep everything as original as possible, especially the parts that are visible. So the focus is on visible parts, and if a part is not visible and it's like economically very expensive to buy, it's easier to say, okay, we're gonna replace it with a more modern part, but also how easy is it to get? Because for this gun, we made the cradle because we just couldn't find one. So it's not even a choice. You have to proceed, so you have to make something. And it's still a part that's, it's still a lot of work, but if you find one, you can still replace it. With armor, if you proceed and you don't have an original part welded in, you're not going to take it out anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a difficult choice to make, and you have to think about many aspects to make a good decision. And in the end, money does play a big role. And for a lot of people that do not restore, it's difficult to understand, and that makes sense because they don't have that experience. But we try to keep everything as original as possible. But you have to be able to find the parts, and how much will it cost if it breaks down? And like a visor of the driver position, like you see behind me, the glass, it's unlikely to break down, and it's not that expensive.
Yeah.
So those are parts that we are trying to buy and keep in original condition.
And speaking of money, you have a fundraiser because I think there was a fire in the past where a lot of was destroyed. So if you want to help out, be sure to check out the link in the description, the pinned comment for the fundraiser. If you want to chime in, I will chime in later as well. And one thing about restoration I want to add, there's also a cultural difference, because I remember when I was in the United States with Chifton, and he told me, they're gonna restore, I think, a Flakpanzer. And I said, cool. And he said, but you know what that means in the United States? And I said, well, it's a difference. He said, yes, because here that means that the gun is fully operational and can fire live ammunition.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is gonna happen because you're in the Netherlands, and I assume it's not in any way legal to have a live fire capable 88mm gun.
Only a museum in the Netherlands is allowed to have a live firing gun, but they are not allowed to fire it.
Yeah.
So we had to get it welded up, unfortunately. But it's that or not having the gun at all.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty simple choice.
And I assume, I think, for instance, in Germany and probably Austria, I'm not even sure if a museum is allowed to have a live firing gun. I know, for instance, that in Germany, I think Panzer museums generally, they have to cut something out of the armor, even of the tank. But the main difference is for the Panzer Museum Munster, that is not the case, because officially these tanks belong to the Bundeswehr.
So that's correct.
So there's a very wide difference between what is original and the restoration and the other aspects.
Yeah, of course. And what you said, for Munster, it's a military property. So for them, it's different than for other museums. I know private collectors in Germany, and they also had to cut the armor.
Yeah.
But they can weld something back so that you don't see it. But if you knock on the armor, you can hear it.
Yeah.
But that's what the law is, and you can say what you like, but you have to do it, or you can't own that Panzer.
The next one is from Fred. It's not a question. I think he's a supporter already of you. He noted, I got a bunch of your t-shirts, one of which I even flew the check ride for my pilot's license.
I think he mentioned it to me, yes. I think I remember something about somebody sending me a picture with airport in the background. So that must have been him.
Probably, that was Fred. So thank you very much, Fred, for supporting Robbie and also for supporting me, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Then, Rob, thank you very much for taking your time and for restoring the Nashorn.
Yeah, no problem.
And for everyone at home, thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.